More now on the seizure of the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. President Trump has defended his ousting, saying it will lead to the rehabilitation of the country. Now, his administration has said it is willing to work with the remnants of Mr. Maduro's regime and would use what they called levers to compel change. Well, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, called on Venezuela's remaining leaders to make what he called the right decisions. Here he is speaking to the US TV network NBC.
They will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned with court orders. We will continue to do that and potentially other things until the things we need to see addressed are addressed. Because ultimately, above everything else, we care about elections, we care about democracy, we care about all of that. But the number one thing we care about is the safety, security, well-being, and prosperity of the United States.
With Mr. Maduro's removal, Venezuela's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, is now in charge. And she comes under immediate pressure, with President Trump saying that she will pay a big price if she doesn't cooperate with the United States. But both Ms. Rodriguez and the Venezuelan armed forces have made defiant comments condemning the U.S. action and promising to maintain their country's sovereignty.
Meanwhile, the Venezuelan Defense Minister, Vladimir Padrino, says a large part of Nicolas Maduro's security team was killed during the US raid on Caracas. Flanked by soldiers, General Padrino demanded the immediate release of Mr. Maduro and his wife, saying they'd been kidnapped.
Esto representa severamente una amenaza contra el orden global.
This represents a severe threat to the global order. If today it was against Venezuela, tomorrow it could be against any state, against any country. This colonialist pretension, which they want to impose on Latin America and the Caribbean, is something we reject.
He said the armed forces had been ordered to maintain order and confront any further aggression.
So what is the reaction in the wider region? I've been speaking to Sir Ronald Sanders, Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to the United States.
It is worrying for many. It is a relief for some. One can only hope that this operation will be as swift as it happened yesterday in the extraction of Nicolas Maduro and his wife by the United States military forces, and that in the aftermath we see a quick return to stability in Venezuela. That is critical for us in the Caribbean, who are its neighbors.
I note to use the word extraction. You don't use a word like kidnap, as some have done.
Well, kidnap is a legal term, and I think that will be decided by a court, whether he was kidnapped or not. What is a fact is that he was extracted.
Is your part of the world less safe than it was? Is the risk of some kind of military confrontation now far greater than it was just a few days ago?
No, I think if anything, it is probably lessened now that the operation that the United States undertook in Venezuela was swift, and that it resulted in no great loss of life. It was not a conflagration. It was certainly nothing akin to what is happening now in other parts of the world, including in Gaza, in Ukraine, and in the Congo. It was swift, it was surgical, and to that extent, we are relieved that it has not been a protracted operation.
Donald Trump says that the United States will run Venezuela. Is that possible? Is that desirable? Is that legal?
I don't know about what arrangements he has made with the internal forces of Venezuela. At the moment, that is just yet to be settled, and it is an unclear point. He has said that Delcy Rodriguez, who is now being appointed as the president of Venezuela in the absence of Maduro, and she was the vice president, is, in his words, cooperating, and that the United States government will be working closely with her. Apparently, the point person on that is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. But what it all means and how it is going to be operationalized is the big question. I mean, anything is possible if one has the cooperation of the people who are actually in the country. But it would seem to me that there's one common interest here by the regime in Venezuela now, led by Delcy Rodriguez, and President Trump administration in the United States. and that is to restore the oil production of Venezuela, to get it up and running as quickly as possible. That clearly is something he sees as a strategic interest point, and I'm sure the regime in Venezuela would be pleased to see it happen, if only because it will bring income to them and give them an opportunity to try to rebuild the economy, create employment, restore some confidence in the country. So there appears to be some confluence of interests in that particular area.
There doesn't appear to be as much outrage from you and from others as perhaps many people not in your part of the planet would have expected. Why do you think that is?
Any situation in which there is repression in a country, by whoever it is, if that repression is eased and therefore there's an opportunity for the country to develop economically, for the human rights of the people of the country to be recognized, for there to be a lessening of the flow of refugees out of the country, which has brought burdens to others, to the extent that all of that is relieved, then there is relief. So I would say that in this particular circumstance, there is relief about it. Of course, we must see what happens next.
There is talk that could be a vote at the UN on whether member states should vote on whether the US action was illegal or not. If you were casting that vote, which way would it go?
Well, first of all, I do not think there would be a vote in the UN Security Council on this. I think if anybody were to raise that proposition, many countries would veto it before it even had life. And those countries, of course, are the 5 veto powers, including the United Kingdom. Each of them will start to look at what the ramifications of such a vote. I think people will shy away from a vote and look instead to start talking amongst themselves about how we can ensure that the rule of law and international law continues to be regarded. Now, the United States has a position that they have not broken international law, but that is not for politicians to judge. At the end of the day, it is a court that must do that. And we will see whether the courts in the United States themselves, which is supposedly an independent branch of the government, will take a different view from the view that the government of the administration of President Trump has taken on this matter. But I can't prejudge what they will say. And I don't think I can, as crystal ball, what will happen in the United Nations, except to say that I do not think there will be any vote.
We shall see, because that session of the UN Security Council is due to happen on Monday afternoon in the US. That was Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to America, Sir Ronald Sanders.